Hello and welcome to Retirement Solutions, the podcast. So excited to be together today. We have a great podcast for you. And, we get all these different questions about, okay, I have my plan for retirement, but now what are we going to do? How are we going to make memories with kids and grandkids? Because that is one of the things that we hear over and over again from you as we talk about your retirement plans. Is one of the main goals is to be able to spend time with those that you love, kids and grandkids. And we are thrilled today to be talking about this topic. And, when we have these meetings in the conference room and they talk about how do we maximize and build relationships, whether they live down the street, which is not always the case because sometimes they're across the country, those kids and grandkids. But in this episode, we want to talk about creating unforgettable moments with your grandkids. And, when you want to create those family bonds, especially with those that you love most, sometimes it can be easier said than done. So we've got a special guest with us today, and Susan Yates. Many of you have probably heard of her before, maybe even read her books, but I'm going to let Susan introduce herself here in a minute. But Susan has been married for nearly 55 years, mother of 5, grandmother of 21, including a set of quadruplets. I can't wait to hear about this. And also, she's created what they call the annual Cousins Camp for the grandkids. And for over a decade in the foothills of the beautiful Shenandoah Mountains. This is a joy today. Susan, 16 books, The Cousin Camp, A Grandparent's Guide to Creating Fun Faith Memories That Last. This is just awesome. So excited and grateful to have you on the show today, Susan.
Well, thanks for having me, Ryan. I've been looking forward to this. It's such a fun topic for me.
Tell the listeners a little bit about what inspired you to write 16 books and create Cousins Camp. I love to hear this origin story.
Well, the books were a total surprise. I never set out to be a writer, but we had 5 kids in 7 years, which was very humbling and exhausting and full of
Yes.
sleep deprivation. But as the kids were growing up and then got married, and we had, as you mentioned, we have 21 grandchildren. One of our goals as a husband and wife has always been primarily that our kids would love the Lord and then that they would love and take care of each other.
Love that.
And trying to figure out how to help that happen when you have so many kids and they don't necessarily live near each other, it begs the question, well, how can they love each other if they don't even know each other? And so it was that question that set us out to trying to figure out how can we get these cousins together because they live in different states. One family lives in our hometown, but the rest are spread out. And it was out of that desire that we created Cousin Camp. And our first year at Cousin Camp, we had 5 children from 3 different families. Parents aren't allowed. And you also have to be 4 years old to come to our Cousin Camp. Now, that's not true for other camps. Everybody handles it differently. But I didn't want to deal with toddlers and bedwetting and sleepless nights in Cousin Camp. So for our camp, you have to be 4 years old. And the kids chomp at the bit to be 4 years old to get to come. And it lasts for 3 nights and 4 days. And it's a wonderful time. We've done it for 11 years. Now our kids are all older. And for the past number of years, we have had 21 grandkids at Cousin Camp.
Wow. That I can't imagine, you talk about memories are priceless.
Mm-hmm.
That's just one of those things that when you hear about that, and now it's gone from the beginning to now all 21 grandkids are there. What a blessing. What a blessing that is. And I'm also curious, 55 years, nearly 55 years of marriage.
It's actually almost 56.
Almost 56. Congratulations. You passed the 55. Your husband's been a pastor, is that right?
Yes.
And then you bring this together. What a great example of a beautiful family and how you've been able to do that.
Thank you, Ryan. We've made lots of mistakes. We've messed up a ton. Families are just plain messy, but we've learned from them, and all along the way, we've had a blast. And The first year we had cousin camp, we were going to do it for 1 year and see how it went. And then
Yeah.
the next year we were going to do it and the next. And it kept going so well, we kept doing it.
Oh, this is such a great topic. Let's talk about building meaningful connections because when I look at building meaningful connections, it involves fun. It involves activities that gets everyone engaged. But I also believe that it's a really good time when you get everyone together to create traditions. And I love how you said every one of the grandkids, they're looking forward to that age 4 when they can come and be part of that group. Um, you know, let's talk about making special moments a little bit. How do you plan and how do you prepare this when you think about creating these special moments, Susan?
Well, first of all, you have to consider the ages of the kids coming.
Hmm.
That's the most important thing. And you have to set a date and you have to work that out for us over a year ahead, given so many different families. But then you just think fun is a big element of cousin camp. We want the kids to have fun. So, one of our most popular traditions happened when I went to the hardware store and I bought a gutter and I lined it with tinfoil and it was, 10 feet long. And I filled the whole thing with all different kinds of ice cream and toppings. And we gave the kids each a spoon and said, okay, dive in. We lined them up. So the gutter ice cream treat has become sort of a staple at family camp. And even now that they're all teenagers and young adults, that's the first thing we do when they get here. They know the first night they will have the gutter ice cream.
That's awesome. Well, and there's no calorie counting of
Oh, no,
that,
not at
right?
camp.
That- That's awesome. What about when you look at connections, being intentional um, with these connections? Can you give over all those years that you've now had Cousins Camp? Can you just give us some examples besides the ice cream? What are some of the other things that you're doing at Cousins Camp?
Well, one of the most popular things was a big surprise to me. We started once we had more than 5 kids and we had maybe 10. We started what was called the buddy system, so that each of the 4-year-olds, or we call them newbies, was assigned an older cousin to be their special buddy for the weekend, to help them fill their water bottles, to help them find their shoes, which are all over the place,
Hmm.
and to sit beside them. We write in journals and to help them with anything. And this was more for me because I needed help. I couldn't do it all, and neither could my husband, John. But what happened was it turned out to be a surprising way to build special relationships. And the next year,
Hmm.
in the spring, almost every year after that, I would inevitably get a call and say, Guy, that's what they call me, Guy, who's going to be my buddy this year? And that just spoke to me of how special this was for the younger kids to have an older kid who was not a sibling assigned to them. And then the older kids learned intentionally how to care for somebody little.
I love
So
that.
that was one of the ways that we slowly built, connection.
I love that. What do you do? Because not everyone lives close. One lives close to you, right?
Yes.
And then the other 4 are spread out. How do you plan that to get everyone there at the same location? And is there ever times when grandkids can't come?
Well, you have to plan it with the parents, and that's why we have to set it up a year ahead. When the kids were young, we always did it the first week that school was out for everybody, and the kids living in different states are on different school schedules, so that was a bit tricky. But it would be over a weekend, which made it easier. And the 3 sets of the parents could drive, 2 had to fly, and so really you work that out a year ahead with the parents.
Hmm.
And, if you happen to be blessed enough to have your children closer, it's a little bit easier to work out. But because ours are spread out, it wasn't. So you just make it a priority and the parents drop the kids off and then they leave. And one of the surprising things, Ryan, has been that the kids behave better for the grandparents than the parents, um, which is wonderful. And also, grandparents can get away with asking kids questions or telling kids things that if it was mom or dad, the child would just roll their eyes in exasperation. and say, "Oh, mom," or "Oh, dad." But basically, they've been taught to respect their grandparents, and so they'll listen. So to me, that's one of the biggest blessings of being a grandparent is what we can get away with.
That's awesome. From being able to, I think that's an important part of, you hear this phrase, it takes a village. And to me, it is amazing how when you get out in moments like that, where you're away from home, you're away from mom and dad, that some of those things that maybe they had a hard time talking about, they can talk to grandma and grandpa about. And
That's right.
what's that been like for you as a grandmother? What's that journey been like for you? And just explain that to the listeners.
Well, one of the things that we have focused on is raising good conversationalists. And we've done this with our own adult kids. And I've done it with my husband. It's so easy to ask questions that just call for a one word answer: yes, no, good day, bad day. And I think, especially coming out of COVID, we need to learn to go deeper. So our questions are usually, what's your favorite thing to do at school? Or what do you like to do with your friends? Who are your friends? Tell me the names of some of your best friends. And I write them down so I can remember them for future conversations. We always have dinner table questions. What was, and our one of our daughters does this every night. She has five littles, and she says, "Okay, what was the high for your day, and what was the low for your day, and what was the surprise in your day?" When our grandkids reached the middle years, during the evening, as they were some of them were teenagers, we would divide them into two teams for one activity. And activities need to be brief. But so one activity, we divided the kids into teams and we said, okay, three questions that we want your team to answer. If you were sitting next to somebody at a dinner table who was an adult older than you, what's a question you could ask them?
Hmm.
What's a question you could ask a peer? And what's a question you could ask somebody younger? And they came up with things like, for an older person, who's somebody that influenced you growing up? And they may say, my aunt, or my youth minister, or my teacher, or coach. But the follow up question was always how, or who, or why. So you had a follow up question. And we divided the kids into two teams as they answered these questions. And it was hysterical. They came up with some really funny things, but kids like to be in teams because they like competition. And they created really good questions. So that's one thing that we have done is try to raise children who have the ability to converse with anybody of any age and not just about the weather or sports. But that's important too.
I love that. I'm curious. The teenagers, you mentioned when the teenagers get a little older. Were there any challenges that you ran into when the teenagers became older? Maybe did they not want to come? Were they like, oh, why am I getting so many questions, Grandma?
You know what? Actually, they had so much fun when they were little that they wanted to come as teenagers.
Hmm.
And one of the things that we've done in the last several years, and now we've gone from cousin camp to family camp because of schedules. We have everybody all together. But one of the things that we have done is turn over more and more of the leadership to the kids. For example, we have an old ping pong table that somebody gave us that's in the basement, and that's been a big attraction. So the kids get on the computer and they print out the grids for who's going to play who and the levels, and they run the ping pong tournament. Another favorite thing that's real easy to do with young kids and on into the teen years is a hula hoop contest. So we have a bunch of hula hoops, and who can go the longest on the hula hoop? And then it's really funny. You get the parents here and they make the dads do it. And the kids just roar. But they organize, as they get older, every year is a turning over to them. So that basically my older kids now could run the camp by themselves.
Well, so I heard a couple things there. Number one is the consistency. That's the tradition part of this,
Yes.
right? The consistency when they started as little kids, then they started looking forward to this every year. And then they became leaders. They became part of that process. Was that, I'm curious, in the leadership side of that, is that something that you do Zoom meetings before and help prep them, the older kids, or is that something that all happens at cousins camp?
No, sometimes we do it before. Like we asked two, and this is a fun story. We have two granddaughters from two different families who, when they were 4 and 5 and came to cousin camp for the first time, could not stand each other. It was that girl rivalry.
Yeah.
But we had them sleep on the floor in our bedroom. We gave them opportunities to be together. And over the next years, 4, 5, and 6 year olds, they became best friends. And today,
Mm.
as teenagers, they are besties, as the kids call it. But one of the things we did a couple years ago, we asked these two girls to organize skit night or entertainment night at the family. And they came up with some hilarious things. So, pairing these kids off, we have a grandson who runs cross country. So, we used a nearby park here in Virginia last year for a 5K race, and he organized it with a girl cousin from a different family. We're trying always to pair them up from different families, and they got medals and had crazy presentations of who was the slowest, who was the fastest, and that was quite fun. So playing to your kids' interests always helps. And if you don't know, when you're just starting out in this, you don't necessarily know, especially if the kids don't live near you, how do I relate to my grandchild who's 7? I don't know what he's into. And that again, Ryan, is where the parents come in. And I use what I call the clue in principle. And I'll call mom or dad, my adult children, and say, clue me in as to what this child of yours is interested in. Give me some things I can talk about with him. Is he into music? Is he into photography? What's he into? So use the clue in principle, and your main source of that is their parents.
When we look at this overall, I have all these questions just popping in my mind. The first question is in your book, because I think everyone listening to this should go get your book. Number one, where can they get your book?
Well, if you go to my website, susanalexanderyates.com, it has all my books. But it's on Amazon. So and it's also published by Baker, and it's on sale with them. So if you go straight to the Baker Publishing Group website, you can get it on sale. So it is your best resource because it's chock full of ideas.
And so, just to give you the title of the book, Cousins Camp: A Grandparent's Guide to Creating Fun, Faith, and Memories That Last. And you can get it at susanalexanderyates.com, or you can get it on Amazon. So that's a great place. Second question I have, I'm curious, in the book, do you give a itinerary and lay it out of what
Oh
Cousins
yeah.
Camp looks like day by day?
Yeah. The first part of the book, I talk about families being messy because there is no perfect family. And one of the things that I like to say to parents of young children, because I experienced this, is over and over again, you are going to have the feeling, I've ruined this child. It's done. I've messed up. I've ruined this child.
Hmm.
And one day I was sort of complaining to God about this, and it was if I felt him say, I didn't hear it audibly, but Susan, your ability to ruin your child is not nearly as great as my power to redeem that child.
I love it.
And that has stayed with me even as a grandparent because, we're self centered, messy people and we're going to make mistakes.
Yes,
So forgiveness and saying I'm sorry is a big part of what we're trying to do is raising our kids and our grandkids.
I love that
So the
so
first
much.
part of the book, back to your question, the first part of the book I talk about families being messy. And one of the things that I like to encourage parents is don't fall into the comparison trap where you're comparing your situation to somebody else's. Everybody's situation is unique. And so that's something you need to be alert to. But then in the middle part of the book is a whole plan for how to do it. And then the third part of the book is what other people have done. Because, there's not just one way to do this. And so we tell lots of stories of other types of family reunions.
You know, I just thinking about families are messy. I believe that's why God gave us families because it's the
Yeah.
ultimate laboratory to learn how to love people, right?
Oh,
Love
yeah.
and forgiveness and mistakes. And I think, and then going into the comparison side, you hear that quote, which I love. Comparison is the thief of joy.
That's right. That's a great quote.
And when you think about that, God gave us our families, whatever our family looks like, for us. And life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us. And so that we can enjoy this journey. And the reason why love is so hard is because it's so deep.
That's
And,
right.
I just love Cousins Camp and this thought of bringing everyone together. I grew up, in fact, in my book, we talk about the family cabin that my
Mm,
dad built. My dad was a barber, and his dream, along with my mom, was to have a place that we could learn how to work, that we could have a place that we could all get together, that we could all fit together, and it would be that routine and that tradition of getting together. Homemade ice cream on the fourth on Memorial Day with leftover snow from the snow up in the Utah mountains, which was always fun. Barbecues on the Fourth of July,
yeah.
fishing, throw rocks in the water, and then it was always the saddest part for me was always Labor Day because that meant summer was over and I was going back to school.
Oh, well, that's a great tradition your parents handed down.
Yeah, and I just think every family's different and unique. And one thing that I want to talk about here is what does this cost? From a because everyone's budgets are different, and I'm just curious to get your input. How can you do this? We build retirement plans for families, and one of the things that we always talk about is how can we have your blueprint, your boss retirement blueprint, allow for things like travel and family vacations. Do you talk about that in the book at all on finances?
No, I will send people to you.
Yeah.
That's where boss comes in. But one of the things that I would say is we're not a family with a huge budget. With my husband being a pastor, it's never been, a huge big budget. But what we've learned is if you start when you're younger, just putting aside a little bit of money, and this is where your expertise comes in, Ryan, in looking at a family's financial plan and saying, hey, could you put into a special family relationship account $50 a month and
Hmm.
do that for the next 10 years? That
Yes.
really builds up. And so that's one way to do it. But another thing I think to keep in mind is you don't have to do extravagant things. For example, when we have our family together, food is simple. This is not a gourmet five-star restaurant. We
Hmm.
keep it really simple. And in fact, as the kids have gotten older, each family takes a dinner meal, and breakfast is cereals, and lunch is make your own salads or sandwiches. So, and we have our camp, we have a little farm, and so we have ours at our little farm, and we borrow neighbors' houses for the overflow, and the
Hmm.
kids all sleep in sleeping bags on the floor. Now that we're all together as a family, this Labor Day there'll be 35 of us
Mm.
because we've gotten big, but the teenagers just sleep in sleeping bags on the floor. My one goal is that each adult would have a bed.
Yes.
So I don't think financially it has to be a huge deal. And you would have the best advice on that.
Well, and I think we have families that have all different types of budgets.
Right.
We have families that are going to spend $1,000 on something like this. We have families that are going to spend $100,000 and they're going to load them on planes and take them somewhere and travel and stay in hotels and eat at good restaurants. And, so that's, I think, where another area that's really important. Comparison is really critical to not compare there because um, it's not about the resources,
It's
it's
really
about
not.
the connection and the love that happens as a result.
Yeah.
And
You're exactly right.
I think there is wisdom. One of the things that we do, B.O.S is an acronym. It stands for Build the Optimal System of Security for Retirement. Part of that system of security is your support system, the family, and those deep relationships that are around you. And you know, the the ice cream trough, you buy that one, you buy that one gutter that can be used over and over again, right? You just wash it and
Oh, it does. I still have the same one. It's stuck in the
yeah,
barn.
you ought to start having them carve their initials in by year that they were there or something like that. That'd be kind of fun. It would be a treasure that everyone would love. Um, you know, that's very, very inexpensive. And then, sleeping on the floor in sleeping bags. Uh,
Yeah.
Grandkids, their bodies can handle that,
Oh,
right?
they can.
They love it. And then I loved how you said you use the park around
Yeah.
your house. and you use the things on your farm and where you live. This is something that I think that you could set a budget and prioritize it with the activities and the locations and just customize that to whatever you want. We have some families that they do their cousins camp at a cabin, or they do it at a favorite place that they all love to get together at a resort or somewhere like that. So it's not the place or the location, it's the love that's built, right?
It is. And I'll just give you a couple of other samples of some things that we've done that show that. My husband loves trees. And so one of our early years when the children were young, elementary age, he had written the name of trees just on a piece of wood, and he maybe 5 trees, and he went around and took the kids and they learned to identify these 5 different trees on our property. Well, today we have a son who's majoring in environmental studies, and his specialty is trees. And he looks back to when he was 6 years old and his grandfather taught him about trees. So you never know what's
Wow.
going to happen. Another really inexpensive, fun thing to do is always before camp, I would go around and I'd find houses under construction, and I'd go up to 1 or 2 houses and ask the builders, would they save me some of their scraps and just put them in a pile? And then I go and collect them in a garbage bag. And I have a bunch of hammers and nails, and we have construction parties at camp. That's one of the activities, is build whatever you want. And another real winner that's inexpensive is beads. You know, you can order those beads that make bracelets that the kids are wearing like crazy. That's another activity. So you don't necessarily have to spend a lot of money. And I'll tell you a funny thing where I made a big mistake. One of the key activities that even now that the kids are all older, they still want to do is we have a whipped cream fight every summer. And I've saved, the little shower caps you get in hotels as condiments when you stay. In case a girl doesn't want to get the whipped cream in her hair, she can wear a shower cap. But we divide into 2 teams, and I go to the store and I buy a can of whipped cream for every child that's there. And we just say, go for it. And they just squirt each other. Now, the first year I did it, I used shaving cream, and it was so gross. The grandchildren said, Gee, this is horrible. We don't want to do this again. I learned. So
I
sometimes you
love
learn
it.
from your mistakes. And the next year we went to whipped cream, and now they love it. So even though they're bigger, that's one of their favorite things to do.
Well, I want to come to cousins camp right now. It's have you had your cousins camp this year? Did you already, with school being out?
No, we've now, because the kids we have 16 teenagers right now and 5
hmm
adult children. We've moved to family camp, which we rotate each year. This year it's over Labor Day. Next year it'll be over Thanksgiving, because you have to consider the other families'
Yes.
obligations. So we'll have family camp this year over Labor Day.
I love this. Well, Susan, this has been an absolute joy. I would encourage everyone listening to go get the book Cousins Camp, and also the other 15 books that Susan has written. I think there's a lot of wisdom, and you've really inspired me to just think deeper about, how can you make these family relationships deeper, so that the love is there, and that just enjoy your family who you are, celebrate who you are, and build those traditions. And from the financial side, we'd love to have a conversation with you. How do you budget this in? What does it look like? And how can we put this in as part of your boss retirement blueprint, so that you not only can you enjoy a secure and independent retirement, but you can be surrounded by those that you love so much. So, Susan, thank you so much. Any final thoughts?
Well, thank you, Ryan, for all that you're doing, because you're considering the whole needs of a family, the financial needs, the personal needs, the relational needs, and that's just huge in today's world.
Thank you so much. And thanks for listening. And remember this, retiring successfully, it doesn't happen by accident. It starts with a plan, and that plan is the Boss Retirement Blueprint. We look forward to sharing time together next week.
Thanks for listening to the Retirement Solutions Podcast with Tyson Thacker and Ryan Thacker. If today's episode inspired you to plan for retirement, go to bossretirement.com/podcast to receive a complimentary Boss Retirement Blueprint. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another story to help you retire with confidence. B.O.S. Retirement Solutions is an independent financial services firm helping individuals create retirement strategies using a variety of investment and insurance products to custom suit their needs and objectives. Investment advisory services are offered by duly registered individuals through B.O.S. Retirement Advisors, B.O.S., an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. The information contained in this podcast is given for informational purposes only, and no statement contained herein shall constitute tax, legal, or investment advice. The information is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. You should seek advice on legal and tax questions from an independent attorney or tax advisor. Our firm is not affiliated with the U.S. government or any governmental agency.